Half-Life 2 and the Half-Life series as a whole is renowned for its expert storytelling. Even with its age, the first Half-Life still exhibits unusually in-depth world building. It skillfully connects plot threads that most games at the time wouldn't have even had in the first place. With that being said, the Half-Life games are seriously detail-oriented, and because of that, they really care about the explanations behind details such as how their various alien species function. As a result of this, Valve has laid some amazing biological groundwork for these fictional organisms. If you don't already know the story of Half-Life, I would highly recommend you watch some videos made by Skyrian. I watch his videos all the time, and they definitely helped me when researching for this video. With all of that being said, the main threat of Half-Life 2, and the first group I will be covering in this video, is none other than the multiverse-dominating empire, the Combine. The Combine are an interdimensional empire that wishes to assimilate as many civilizations as it can into its empire. The several life forms that compromise its military force are primary indicators of this. We don't ever get to see any of the actual Combine, like the original Aliens. All we ever get to see is a glimpse into what we can assume is a homeworld of some sort. The only units we get to see in combat are different types of aliens that the Combine have assimilated into their empire. A flagship example of this is the Strider. The Strider is an alien species that is a synthetic biomechanical copy, or synth, of whatever the original Strider species is. It's a three-legged, tripod-like organism with a brownish exoskeleton covering its weak points. It also has two appendages at its front. One seems to be a combination of a fully automatic pulse cannon and an eye, which allows it to open fire on a target upon immediate visualization. The second appendage is a warp cannon, primarily used for clearing out heavy targets and buildings. Its three legs are sharp spikes at their ends, which are tipped with smaller spikes that look like hairs protruding from them. These are primarily used to impale targets that its weapon systems cannot immediately identify. The Strider also appears to have a brain, which implies that it also has a central nervous system. This idea is also influenced by the fact that when it takes significant damage or dies, it will make a noise that appears to sound like a cry of pain or discomfort. The Strider also has a construction counterpart. This version is fitted with cybernetic enhancements running along its legs, likely to aid with the movement of heavy objects during major construction projects. The lower parts of these enhancements serve as coverings for the Strider's sharp legs, and are designed to allow for easy traversal around congested environments like towns. The construction Strider also appears to have a sort of hook on its underside instead of its warp cannon. It's used to pick up things like these wires. It also has a single eye on its front instead of the pulse cannon and eye combination that we saw earlier. The construction Strider is mounted with a platform where, rather than independently completing tasks, it will be controlled by a Antlion Worker riding on top of it. As a result of the original Strider's independent behavior, I believe that this control of the Strider works as a procedural navigation system, where the control panel hijacks the central nervous system and makes it calculate the most effective and balanced path through any given environment, which is likely why it will sometimes grapple onto a building at random. The Strider is simply a single example of a synth in the Combined Empire, synths being a recurring unit in their ranks. Another example of a major synth used within the Combine's forces are the Hunters. The Hunter is a synth that shares much of its appearance with the Strider, being a tripedal synth which also appears to have a form of central brain system based on its cries of pain and communication, and even what sounds to be a laugh. Now, it seems like the Hunter is far more biological than the other synths, as it will spill a blood-like fluid when damaged and appear to have far more fleshy parts and even a softer layer of armor. This is probably because of its smaller scale and its need to move with a lot more agility and speed than the Strider. It possesses small, backwards-facing spikes at the ends of each of its legs. This forms a sort of hoof shape, which is likely the explanation for how it runs in a similar manner to an earth horse. The Hunter also has several insect-like appendages on its body, which, to my knowledge, serve no purpose, and are probably a part of the original species that the Hunter was before its assimilation. This unit is primarily used as a Combine scout to investigate potentially hazardous or non-urbanized areas, such as the Resistance missile silo and the sprawling forests that surround it. It is also used as an escort for the Striders themselves, especially in open environments where the Striders do not have buildings and large debris to cover them from enemy fire. But don't let the Hunter's minor part played in the Combine's domination fool you. The Hunter is equipped with a flechette cannon, which, to a freeman with a solid metal hazardous environment suit, may not be the worst danger in the world, but to an unarmored rebel, can be an absolutely devastating projectile. The Hunter is a terrifying threat that dominates the uncharted forests of Half-Life 2. But there is another synth which dominates the skies instead, and that is the Gunship. The Gunship is an independent Combine synth that appears to have been made in the image of some kind of aquatic organism. It has a uniform, tube-like appearance with 3 body segments. The front and smallest body segment has a pulse cannon mounted on it. It seems like this works in a similar way to the Strider's pulse cannon, functioning both as an optical and offensive appendage at the same time. The midsection of the Gunship is host to a pair of flippers. These are likely a feature of the original species, as they seem to have no purpose other than maybe balancing. On this same midsection, there are 2 balls that appear to be compound eyes, which may imply that its pulse cannon is either additive to its optical ability or not a part of it at all. On the backside of the Gunship, the most evident feature is the rotor, which is what allows it to fly. Over all of its body, it appears to have shown a bit of evolutionary convergence with Earth species such as sharks. You see, sharks have evolved to be colored white on their underbelly and darker blue on their tops because it creates an effective camouflage, where to organisms below it, the shark blends in with the white of the daytime sky, and to those above it, it blends in with the bluish sands of the ocean floor. This kind of skin coloration is called countershading, and this countershading is exactly what can be observed in the Combine Gunship. However, rather than a bluish white and gray, like a shark, its underbelly is colored bright white to blend in with the day sky to those below it, and its top side, interestingly, is covered with a brownish orange, which allows it to blend in with the rocky and dirty terrain from the perspective of anything that may be above it. The Combine Gunship, like the rest of the synths covered so far, appears to have a brain system with the usual cries of pain, death, and discomfort. The Combine Gunship also appears to have a utility counterpart, the Combine Dropship. This one is primarily used for the transport of military units over long distances, such as Striders, APCs, and Combine Dropship containers, which can house a variety of units such as civil protection, Combine foot soldiers, and even roller mines. The Dropship has many of the same properties as the Gunship. However, it is non-offensive, with only the Dropship container having a manned pulse cannon, and not the synth itself. It has several limbs, which are the primary appendages it uses to pick items up. The Dropship has also been shown to pick up variable items, with a primary example being the first drivable car that the player can interact with in Half-Life 2. Another potential derivative of the Combine Dropship is the Combine Advisor Pod, a whale-like synth that has no apparent purpose other than to transport high-ranking Combine officials, advisors, in relative safety and what I assume to be comfort. The transport pod shares many biomechanical attributes with the Gunship, such as the mechanical formation on its underside similar to the formation on the underside of the Gunship's midsection. The synths I've covered thus far are the primary ones, and while I could cover synths such as the Crab or Mortar synth, there is basically no information on them, so they will be skipped, and I will move on to the other units of the Combine Empire. The first step in the process of human assimilation into the Combine is to join the ranks of civil protection. Usually, one would assume that to willingly join the ranks of your malicious overlords could only come from a place of insanity. However, when you're forced to be constantly relocated from your family and be without food for agonizingly long amounts of time, only to find out that civil protection is provided with rations and, stimulants to keep them going, maybe a spot in your overlord's ranks doesn't sound all that bad. Civil protection units possess no cybernetic modifications, but wear a suit equipped with a helmet and a gas mask, as well as a radio and voice coding functionality. They also get a nice suit, with a partly bulletproof vest and a cool design, which is probably more known to be part of Barney's design in Half-Life 2. The Civil Protection Force is primarily used as a police force. However, their name is quite the deception, as they do anything but protect the civilian population of City 17. They are often seen outright killing innocent civilians who are caught in the middle of firefights, to no punishment from Overwatch, the advanced AI which manages them all. The Civil Protection Force is often equipped with a generic Combine 9mm USP match and the Combine SMG with a built-in grenade launcher that they just never use for some reason. Now, after joining Civil Protection, you may assume that you have reached the maximum amount of involvement within the Combine Empire. However, this is an empire of ambition and greed, and so the bulk of the Combine force stationed on Earth is composed of the Transhuman Combine forces. They are a force composed of humans who were repurposed to serve different functions in the Combine Empire. In the early days of the Combine's reign, they were far more diversified, with the Combine Grunt, which is like a less modified version of the Combine Foot Soldier, the Combine Ordinal, which was kind of a commander for individual squads, the Combine Hazmat and Worker units, which are basically the Combine Cleanup Squad, and the Combine Heavy and Suppressor, both units which carry large weapons. However, by the time 20 years had passed since the Resonance Cascade, the Combine had unitized their transhuman forces a lot more. The Grunt and Ordinal were partly merged to make the Combine Soldier, the Heavy and Suppressor were merged into the Elite, and the Cleanup Crew appears to have been completely eliminated, along with the Construction Striders, which, for clarification, may just be a retcon. Lots of speculative fan art has been made regarding the transitional period between the units seen in Half-Life Alyx and the ones seen in Half-Life 2, which I think is really cool. The transhuman Combine forces are extremely modified humans whose brains and nervous systems have been almost entirely replaced by Combine technology. They are designed to be restless, obedient, and efficient killing machines. While from the inside of an HEV suit they seem like mere obstacles in the way of the objective, their very biology has been modified to make them so much faster and stronger than the average human that they don't even need to factor in potential injuries when they employ the battle tactics that have been mentally inscribed into what remains of their brains. The transhuman forces, while not the most powerful of the Combine, are, without a doubt, one of the more fascinating specimens of Combine alteration. The Combine are a truly imposing force, and they are one of the few empires in fiction that specifically use biology to aid them in their endeavors. However, there is another, more animalistic group that can be seen in the Half-Life universe, which, upon their introduction into Earth's ecosystem, have shown promising results regarding their evolution. Without further delay, I present to you the Headcrabs. The Headcrabs of Half-Life are truly fascinating organisms. Their representation, primarily how they changed from Half-Life 1 to 2, is what inspired this entire video in the first place. You see, in Half-Life 1, there is a single type of headcrab presented, and what appears to be a mother headcrab in the form of a gonarch. And while we don't know much about how a headcrab changes into a gonarch, what we do know is that upon the headcrab's introduction into Earth's ecosystems, over the course of 20 years during Gordon Freeman's absence, they rapidly diversified into 3 groups. The first group is the common headcrab, which has not seen much change from Half-Life 1 other than the upgrade in graphics, of course. The headcrab is a fairly basic parasitoid organism which shares a distinct resemblance with, and I quote, raw chicken. It has what appears to be 4 legs, but upon a more detailed view, their whole body can be supported with only their 2 back legs, likely an evolutionary adaptation to improve their effectiveness at latching onto prey. You see, the headcrab primarily attempts to latch onto the head, or wherever the brain function of the host is, and simultaneously take control of it and presumably feed off of it. This creates a form of zombie, which, as opposed to this name, likely does not attack to feed, and rather attacks to either aid its fellow headcrabs or attacks territorially. The latter is most likely due to the fact that a headcrab zombie can be completely isolated with no food and be completely sustained with its host alone. The territorial tendencies of the headcrab zombie are probably an evolutionary instinct developed to protect the host body. To latch onto a host, they use their beaks, sharp, tooth-like appendages that appear to dig into a victim's skull. Interestingly, when headcrabs are without beaks, they are essentially functionless, as they apparently cannot merge with a host when debeaked. This may imply that the beaks hold a form of venom that allows the victim to be taken over, potentially paralyzing them. A grim fact about headcrabs is that they seemingly have the ability to keep their hosts alive as they are latched on. This likely means that all hosts remain conscious, with their cries being able to be heard, although obscured by headcrab noises. This in itself is an interesting concept for a theoretical organism. However, it's the two other groups that have diversified that are the ones that really pique my interest. The next organism in this category is the fast headcrab. This headcrab is interestingly ambiguous, as I don't really know whether or not they have evolved while already on a human head or independently from them. You see, the fast headcrab is a derivative of the common headcrab, which has evolved to become far more agile than the original. They have become fully quadrupedal, which is probably the result of their introduction into Earth's gravity, which may differ majorly from their home planet, and has a history of allowing quadrupedal animals to be the fastest. The fast headcrab's beak has been completely eliminated and replaced with its 4 sharp spikes at the end of all 4 of its legs. This headcrab can exist independently from its host. However, we never really see a fresh fast headcrab zombie. All fast zombies we see in Half-Life 2 are severely decayed. This implies that, likely as a result of harsh and unfamiliar environments, either the fast headcrab evolved to survive off of dead organisms, or developed the ability to only sustain the motor brain system without retaining any other part of the body. Obviously, this results in a much frailer zombie, and so, as a result, the fast zombie is far more territorial than the average zombie. The final type of headcrab is the poison headcrab. This headcrab has developed a much wider, square-like frame with several hair-looking spines across its body. These may serve a similar purpose as a tarantula's hairs, which are to disrupt predators, or they could contain a deterring poison. It also has more beaks on its underside than the average headcrabs. The new beaks are likely for the purpose of injecting poison, a trait that was likely developed through natural selection, as these headcrabs are deadly effective at subduing prey, far more than the fast and normal headcrabs, respectively. This is because the poison headcrab administers a form of neurotoxin within their host. This neurotoxin, in-game, reduces the player to 1 HP, which may suggest a group mentality, as it can work as support for fellow headcrabs. Another trait that suggests a hive mentality is the poison headcrab's tendency to congregate on their hosts. As we can see here, the poison headcrab zombie can be seen with up to 4 whole poison headcrabs per host. These headcrabs have the ability to latch onto a host's back, which is likely the reason for their wide frame. Interestingly, the poison headcrab zombie will throw the fellow headcrabs on its back towards any potential aggressor. This appears to be self-destructive, however, it may have been developed as a form of reproduction, as this may result in another poison headcrab zombie being formed. As we have previously established, headcrabs, in most cases, need to keep the host alive. As a result of this, victims of the poison headcrab may suffer one of the worst fates in all of Half-Life, their cries echoing throughout all of Ravenholm. The Headcrabs are one of the most well-known parts of Xen, and while their introduction into Half-Life 2 is very iconic, another important part of Xen, which is original to Half-Life 2, is a more traditional species that isn't exactly a parasite, but is very capable of inciting an infestation of its own. This species is the Antlion. The Antlion species lives up to its name. They are an ant-like congruence of organisms with aggressivity akin to that of the most ferocious lions. The Antlion race, first seen on Earth as opposed to Xen, although it is obviously assumed that that is their origin point, is intent on consuming everything that it comes across and terraforming the environments it tramples along the way. The most common form of antlion is the Antlion soldier. It is quite an odd specimen considering most earthly insect colonies have workers as their most common unit. This may, however, be the result of Gordon's intrusion, sparking a much higher presence of soldiers to thwart his presence. The Antlion soldier is a quadrupedal insectoid, around the height of the average human. As opposed to something like an ant on Earth, an antlion's body features no thorax and only has a head and abdomen. Interestingly, their leg structure is inverted in a way. Their hind legs extend from the back of their abdomen, and their forelegs vice versa, extending from the near transition point between the abdomen and the head. Adding to the oddities of the antlions, they have no eyes. This suggests that the environment that the antlions developed in completely lacks or has very little light, as most insects on Earth at least had the evolutionary benefit of some kind of compound eye. The antlions may have developed on a planet far from its sun, with an optimal form of soil for them to tunnel around in. However, while this may be the case, the antlion's developed exoskeleton is green in color. This evolutionary trait suggests that the antlions needed some form of color camouflage, which in turn suggests that where they developed has some form of light. A potential solution to this minor paradox is that the color was widely adopted for some kind of mating advantage, or there may have been a major predator on their planet of origin which developed sight before they did, thus forcing natural selection to choose the most optimally colored antlions to survive. This is major speculation. What we do know, however, is that the antlion soldier has also developed the ability to fly. There are two pieces of its exoskeleton which can be opened at will, and upon doing so, reveal a small set of wings, similar to beetles on Earth, which may also be an evolutionary indicator of the major predator theory I mentioned earlier. The antlion's mouth, as far as I can tell, may be a form of inverted proboscis, one that functions with the small teeth around it. These may help the antlion latch on to any prey or food and eat it, although it is unclear. Another interesting detail is that the antlion soldiers specifically seem to operate on pheromones, which is typical for insects on Earth. Interestingly, if a human were to get its hands on a pheropod, something which I'll elaborate on later, certain applications of pressure will allow it to command the antlions to their will, without suffering any kind of harm. Antlion blood across the board is yellow. This can indicate many things. It could be a toxin, or a potential increase in the presence of vanabins, an attribute which can be seen on Earth sea cucumbers. Overall, the antlion soldier is quite the interesting organism, but it has a lesser seen cousin which displays one of the most common traits found in earthly insects, and that is the Antlion Worker. This antlion unit presumably digs out chambers for the antlion colony, expanding its reach. For a worker, however, it is surprisingly armed to the teeth, dripping with a greenish, poisonous liquid wherever it goes. Its head is extremely enlarged. This may be a trait that further helps with the digging of tunnels, however, it is also enlarged because the main portion of the toxic acid is located there. This adaptation is quite odd because, as Gordon Freeman's HEV suit tells us, this is a neurotoxin, which means that this species has in fact developed a very dangerous neurological toxin to be stored within its head, and by extension where I assume its brain to be. Now, the Antlion Worker will spit this neurotoxin at any potential invaders, giving them a nasty surprise. Why the soldiers don't have this trait is a mystery, as it would make sense. However, it is likely because workers, being the expansionists of the colony, are a lot more important to keep alive than soldiers, which I assume can be born en masse, although we never see a queen or king. Additionally, they also use the acid to aid in their expansion of the colony, as it is very corrosive. The Antlion Worker overall keeps a similar body structure to its brethren, with the odd leg order I mentioned earlier. This will be a recurring theme in the Antlion species. The Antlion Worker also has a noticeable lack of thick exoskeleton, which is probably to reduce the amount of weight and allow for easier flying, as its wings are quite small. The Antlions I've covered thus far are quite puny, at least in comparison to Gordon's HEV suit, and as we can see here, they die very easily from gunfire. Because of this, Antlions need to have some muscle, some protection, some leadership, and the Antlion that fills this role is none other than the Antlion Guard. This antlion is a behemoth, standing at nearly 9 feet in height. They follow a similar body structure to the rest of the antlions, however, its legs are more traditional, with the back and front legs being positioned in a more ordinary format. It remains blind, however, its head is massively enlarged and the exoskeleton extremely thickened. This is primarily an offensive trait, as the guard can visibly be seen using its head as a primary form of attack. Its exoskeleton is so thick that traditional weapon rounds and even bullets within the advanced combine guns don't do much, and so the optimal form of neutralization of this antlion is with explosives. There are several more traits that can be seen on it, the purposes of which are unknown. For example, towards the inner part of the Antlion Guard, 2 small arm-like appendages appear to just hang there, although the guard does use it to scratch its head. These arms have some armor on them, which may suggest that they work as a mobile form of defense for the guard's vital organs. It also has an array of blue feathers on its back. This may suggest that the guard can use these to pick up some sort of signal that allows it to more properly sense enemies other than smell, touch, or hearing. That, or it could be for mating purposes. The Antlion Guard has full command over Antlion soldiers, being able to issue orders in a sense. As it is seen here, when an Antlion Guard is present with a small group of Antlions, it will send them to fight first before determining if the threat requires its own offensive support. The Guard has a variant called the Guardian, which boasts a larger health pool, and a green color, which indicates the same kind of neurotoxic acid seen within the Antlion Worker. It is essentially a more offensive Antlion Guard, which is assigned with the task of protecting the Antlion young. Speaking of which, the Antlion young are an interesting case. They share no resemblance with the adult Antlions, which is expected. However, what's interesting about them is that they seem to produce an enzyme or chemical that has medicinal properties. No other Antlions demonstrate this. What this means is that the antlion species may have a practice similar to Earth ant species, where the larvae will serve a functional purpose while young. A primary Earth example of this is the weaver ant, which uses its young as a glue gun to connect leaves together. The antlions, on the other hand, may exhibit a similar behavior, except the young may be used as a way to heal any injured workers or guardians. They also have the instinct to call for help when approached by a potential enemy. This allows them to also function as in-house alarm systems. The larvae of the antlions seem to feed on biological material that the antlions will bring from the surface of wherever their nest is. We can see skeletons of former humans and combine alike, who have been completely annihilated by these grubs. The Half-Life universe is an expansive one, full of many fantastical creatures and deadly abominations alike. And because of that, there were many organisms that I did not cover due to their lack of any clear faction of the 3 that I covered today. I'll throw them up in this edit here. And so my analysis comes to an end. The results of this study were very interesting, and it was a really immersive experience to look at all of these fictional organisms and look at them through a biological lens. I do certainly plan to release more studies like this, and until that time, I hope this video has inspired you, the viewer, to look at the fictional life in your games with more detail and appreciate the lengths that the developer went through to create a truly meaningful experience. With that being said, the time has come for the necessary YouTube algorithmic address. If you enjoyed this video, like it. And if you want to see more biological analysis and more of my content in general, make sure to subscribe to my channel, as it will, as you know, notify you when I upload. And with that out of the way, I graciously thank you for watching to the end, and I bid you a sincere farewell.